And this is where we stop talking because it gets awkward because we're like doing a podcast. Right?
I got no problem with that. Let's do it.
Is that what happens?
Let's do it.
I don't know. Anyway, we just got done with a 10-minute walk, getting to know our guests a little bit better.
Yes,
and Drew, how'd you meet up with Chris in the first place?
Chris and I have known each other from the gym, Gold's in Venice. I've been there about, probably 12 years, and Chris probably even longer. And literally we met because of my dog, I think. And Chris said,
Lucky.
Yeah, Lucky dog.
Yeah, we met actually because you were training with Daniel Arago.
Oh, that's true.
Who's a good friend of mine and a business partner of yours and kind of mine too. We do a lot of stuff with Daniel.
True.
He has all the answers. So we met through Daniel, and you had your dog Lucky with you. Where did Lucky go?
Yeah, Lucky's over here next to me on the floor. Yeah,
there's
just
Lucky.
chilling.
So Lucky is a service dog.
Yeah.
And why don't you tell everybody, because it was the craziest story to me.
Right.
I came up to you because I thought you were, had PTSD from being in the military or some sort of thing like that. Right. And I said, what do you have, PTSD? And you're like, no, man, my dog. And tell them what your dog does. It's phenomenal.
I think that conversation surprises a lot of people. But Lucky is a cardiac alert dog. He's trained to smell rapid increases in cortisol hormone related to stress. Right, it's a stress hormone that we release. And the backstory on that is that in October of 2004, I gained the dubious distinction of being the only medical case, so they believe, to survive 3 sudden cardiac arrests in the same night. Right, so I got implanted with a defibrillator pacemaker device here, and
there's basically like some sort of electronics or something inside.
Yeah, so
your body
it's like the paddles. It's the exact same thing as the paddles. It'll shock my heart and
like Iron Man
revive me. Yeah. So just like Iron Man. So, but about 2 years later. Everything was going great. There was no problems or anything, but this is like an onboard computer, so they can read what's happening all the time, 24 hours a day, just by hanging a device around it that's connected to the computer. And they said, we have some irregular levels there. Are you stressed out? And I'm great. Business is going good. I'm traveling a lot. I had a business in Nashville. I had a business in Los Angeles. I was training and traveling all the time and training businesses. And they said, well, good stress or bad stress, your body doesn't know the difference.
you're in really good shape.
Yeah, it didn't have anything to do with
You
that.
don't look like somebody would have a heart problem.
Right, exactly. So they said maybe we should talk about some medicine or so on. I said, no. You guys have scoped me from the inside out and said I was extremely healthy. I'm just going to move to the beach and I'm going to get a cardiac alert dog. So that's what I did. I moved to Manhattan Beach and got a place on the beach and found somebody that would train a cardiac alert dog. And then I found Lucky as a puppy.
How did you even know about that existed?
That's a great question. So I had just serendipitously, I had read a article that Johns Hopkins University was doing studies with cardiac alert dogs and and cancer dogs and epileptic and diabetic dogs and different things like that. And so, at the time reading the article, I never thought, hey, I might need one of those. It never occurred to me until the doctor was giving options of things that he thought I might do, and I didn't like the sound of any of them. And I said, how about a cardiac alert dog? And
so what does happen if you're training and you're going too overboard? What happens? What does Lucky do?
So it's the sudden and rapid increase. And Mark asked me earlier, how does he know the difference? Well, there are certain times where it's kind of expected, like cortisol levels are going to increase in the gym. That's kind of, or driving down the 405, or whatever. But what he is trained to do is to smell sudden and rapid increases, so all of a sudden it's not there. Boom, it is there.
What if I'm training with you and I have a sudden increase in cortisol?
Yeah.
Is it just so uniquely different to the dog's smell?
It is. So what they do is they test your blood to find out when your cortisol level is high and then soak a sponge in saliva, right? And so just like everybody's pheromones are different, all of our cortisol levels smell different to the dog, which is amazing. They say that dogs have somewhere, north of, 5 dozen different senses that they can operate from, and
you'd figure they have no sense of smell with how they fart sometimes.
Yeah, exactly right. That's exactly right. And
damn, that was the dog. You're like,
right. And mine's on raw food
How's
diet.
the dog still alive after that?
Yeah, right. So, but they all do smell smell completely different. So, and he can smell. And Lucky is a breed of dog called a plot hound, Plott. There's a very specific kind of rare breed of hound dog. They're the only breed of hound dog that is a German hound dog. All other hounds are of English descent, but they're known pretty much worldwide. In fact, even on safari in Africa, the Masai Mara tribesmen translated that they knew that the Plott hound was known as the samurai of hunting dogs because they have the highest sense of smell. And they have allegedly can smell a prescription bottle closed in a glove compartment, closed in a car, doors closed, windows up, and them on the outside. They can smell the prescription in the car.
Wow.
Yeah, they're crazy. So it's amazing that their senses are. And I have 2 other dogs that are wonderful dogs, but they don't hear or smell any of the stuff that Lucky does. It's completely different.
Do people come to you now, especially like once they know that story? Do people look for you to like kick some sort of special wisdom to them? You had near death experience, I should say,
Near life experience.
3 times in one night.
Right.
But then also it was a compilation of some stress.
Yeah, it was.
Even though you didn't feel those stresses, and you moved to the beach, and now you're learning to manage stress.
Right.
Do people kind of say, "Hey, man, how you doing it?" Because I think we're all pretty fucking stressed out.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we are. No, they do, and there are things that I gleaned after that, that kind of near death, near life experience, like you said, Mark. And one of the things that happens, and this isn't just with heart people, but I have a brother that's a cancer survivor, and anybody that's really kind of, when you've crossed the threshold of really contemplating your own mortality, things change for you, right? And they change for me drastically. I have an almost zero tolerance for bullshit. I don't know if we can say that on this podcast, but
you can say bullfuck.
Well, okay, all right. But I literally, like, I have it pretty much. There's no part of my life that it's not prevalent in, whether it's a relationship or a business or even a conversation. Like, I'll just walk away from it, right? I have no tolerance from it whatsoever. So that changed a lot. And then also, like, in doing that, you find yourself a lot less stressed because you don't get hung up on stuff, right? But I did start taking steps to understand, and this is a great point, understand the difference between feelings and emotions, right? And a lot of people don't understand, what is the difference between a feeling and an emotion? Well, I feel mad. Well, that's not an emotion, right? And so when you really start to, and I spent a lot of time trying to figure that out and trying to work that out. And another thing is really hard to do is to say, I don't know, right? I don't have the answer. And that was really one of the things that kind of sent me down the path of being extremely stressed out. And the backstory behind that is, I've been a trainer and nutritionist now I started when I was 19, so almost going on 25 years now, and I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. Though it wasn't that I wanted to be a scientist or I wanted to be a coach or any of those type of things. I loved health and fitness, but I always loved business, right? And I wanted to be a part of that. And so in my late 20s, I acquired a chain of fitness facilities, chain of gyms that I bought from someone else and then converted them. Back then, I don't even think they're around anymore, but back then we converted them to World Gym franchises.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, Gold's Gym, World Gym, Powerhouse Gym. So, and we converted them to World Gym franchises and ran that business, but we acquired them from somebody else. And what we found about 90 days into it, was that even though we had done a significant amount of due diligence, is that the financial documents had been falsely recreated, forged, basically, and that we were about $400,000 in the hole, right?
Wow.
And so for the next 2 years, I dumped every penny I had, ruined my credit, took a second mortgage on my parents' home, like everything that I could to try to save these businesses. And ultimately, long story short, it didn't work. And I lost everything, and I was the majority partner in the corporation, so it dragged me through a corporate bankruptcy because I had to separate myself from being liable of these millions of dollars in debt, and I was only 30 years old at the time, so that was a lot to handle, and it just pushed me over the edge, and I I thought that I could will myself into succeeding. You know, like if I was really strong and like I can make it happen. You know, and it's not like getting yourself hyped up for a workout. I mean, like,
Yeah, I tell that to people all the time. I'd say, like, I don't know any other way to build habits and to put up points on the scoreboard other than like working out and through nutrition.
Yeah.
Sounds like a meathead thing to say, but you can't really do it in business. I can't sit down with you and talk to you about some of your projects you have coming up, and I can't like talk to you any more like intense about it. I can't get any more hyped up about it. I can't take a pre-workout and turn a special song on and like try to make it happen like you can with lifting.
And there's a little bit of that kind of intensity that we've learned from all of our years of lifting and training and working with athletes and competing and all of
persistence that. Persistence is the main one.
Yeah. We've learned persistence. We've learned resilience, right? And if there's one thing that still all these years later is still permeating my life, it is if I've been knocked down 9 times, I'm getting up 10. And I'm getting up more excited, more kind of with greater fervor than I was when I got knocked down before. So the resilience more than anything, and that is to me, and I do a lot of talks and things like that. It's corporately and for the military and stuff like that. The importance of resilience, right? And I think that goes through all parts of our lives. All three of us could talk about our own bouts with resilience and being able to use that. So the original question was, do people kind of come to me for some wisdom on how to deal with stress or so on, and I hope so, but I know I'm kind of an intense person, in general, and I like to get things done right now. I don't believe in a lot of delays and stuff.
Drastic changes? Have there been some things where you're like, I don't know, for example, social media, emails, like there's certain things like I'm not getting involved. Like if someone calls me and they want to talk to me this way, I'm going to have somebody else do it. Or are you delegating out? Like, is there some differences
That's a great question.
from you before and after?
That's a great question.
Manage the stress.
So I was not a great delegator, right?
Why do you think that is?
Well, I'll tell you. I was raised with a very, very strong work ethic. My dad was, and my mom. My mom was a school teacher. My dad was a firefighter that had been a Army Vietnam vet, and very intense and very work ethic driven and that kind of thing. And so I had a lot of structure and a lot of kind of go hard mentality. Also, the belief that if I tried, there was anything that I could do, right? And if you want it done right, do it yourself kind of mentality. You know what I mean? And I'm sure you guys, grew up with some of that too, and so when I got into business and, ultimately that's when I ended up getting my degree in was business. I found myself kind of trying to keep my hands in all the minutia. I was in the financial minutia. I was in the marketing minutia, the sales, what color toilet paper are we ordering? And, like I found myself involved in all the minutia. And if one small thing went wrong, it seemed like a huge, and I stopped. I don't do minutia anymore. I'm really fortunate that I have a great team of agents and managers and publicists and business partners, Daniel and, all kinds of people.
Well, let's talk about why you have all these managers, agents, and people, because people are probably watching going, who the hell is this guy?
Exactly.
What does he do, right?
I'm not that famous.
So if you guys don't know who Drew Logan is, Drew Logan was on NBC's Strong. You were one of the trainers on Strong, right?
Yes,
Sylvester Stallone produced show. He was the EP on that, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And then also you wrote an excellent, which I say 3 times,
Thank you.
book.
Thank you.
That's sort of when we first met.
Right.
And one of the reasons I really wanted to talk to you.
Right.
You basically wrote a book that's about the ketogenic diet, but it never mentions the word ketogenic or keto.
Sneaky.
Even once in it.
That's right.
And as I was reading through it, I got about a couple chapters in, and I'm like, I know what this guy's doing.
Mm-hmm.
So then I went to the gym and asked you, he was like, did you write a keto book without saying the word keto? And you're like, yeah, I did. And I thought that was fascinating because that's a thing that we're up against a lot, is when we tell people, that's why we say war on carbs. It's just easier. Right. You're not really talking about testing blood ketones and this and that and the complications that come with a ketogenic diet. But tell us a little bit about your book and why you wrote it.
Well, twofold, and I'll start with the end. The reason that I purposely left keto out of the book is that a lot of people think they know what it means, but they really don't, right? And being ketogenic is a byproduct of something you've already done, right? And so a lot of people think that it is a product that's being taken because there are a lot of exogenous ketone, not a lot, but
right. A lot of
but there's
people
there are several exogenous ketone products out there. I wouldn't say a lot, but there are several. And so people think it's something that they're taking or something that they're doing, or it's involved in an MLM, or it's a, kind of a cult following, or it's a buzzword, or it's a fad. In reality, cut your carbs and take more fats, your body produces it anyway, right? So I didn't want to get into that conversation. I didn't even want to have the conversation. So I purposely left it out and explained the sciences behind, really, honestly, and as you clearly, understand, my book is really about the brain chemical response.
Sure, it has a little bit of a different angle.
Yeah.
Your book is a cyclical ketogenic diet, basically, with a lot of nootropic stuff thrown in there, like a lot of things that are going to help supercharge your brain.
Move on to some of that stuff. What's the reason? What's cyclical? What makes it cyclical?
So the belief with a lot of low carbing or ketogenic or so on and so forth is that you go into this state and then you stay there, right? And that somehow magically, poof, you are cured, fixed, you're going to be lean forever, or you're going to have this great energy, or cognitively you're going to be enhanced, or so on and so forth. If you back away from that a minute and you understand that our bodies are basically constantly adapting to things that we're doing. There's an old adage, and I'm sure both of you guys have heard it, the best workout to do is the one you're not doing.
Yeah.
Right? So, Mark, I saw recently on your Instagram page, you started doing boxing. Right. And I'm sure when you first started doing that, you felt like, how in the hell am I this worn out? How does it feel this way?
It was actually too much. It was too stressful.
Right.
I had to stop doing it for a little while. Then I had to come back to it gradually.
Because what you do, and us being at a higher level athleticism, we jump into the next endeavor the same way that we're currently existing in the one we're in.
100% full blast.
And that didn't work, right? So we immediately jump into an overtraining, right? But in enough period of time, our bodies are trying to adapt. They're trying to learn what we're giving them, right? So the question that you have to ask yourself is, what am I teaching my body to happen, right? And so there's a point of diminishing returns, and I'm not going to get into all the research. You can Google it, look it up. There's zillions of studies on the point of diminishing returns as it relates to keto dieting, or any kind of dieting for that matter. But that number really exists starting as early as 72 hours or going up to about the end of the 5th day, right? And it really kind of depends on what your exertion level is, how lean you are already, resting metabolic rates, blah, 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 a bunch of stuff like that. In a best implemented program, about every 3 to 5 days, you're going to take a meal that is low glycemic, but still involved, still very much a carb, but doesn't cause high glycemic response. Example would be oats. Example would be a sweet potato.
You have some oatmeal in the morning or something.
Sure, right. So the way that I prefer to teach it is that we actually created that meal as one meal as a load that is very overloading, and we really remove the protein macronutrient from that meal. I promote that meal is done as the last meal of the day prior to going to bed. The idea thereby is to increase IGF-1 stimulation and growth hormone, so you're actually hyper healing, or at least that's the premise, right? And without going down that rabbit hole. So by cycling through like this, what's happening is you're teaching your body to constantly be in a state of adaptation and confusion. So if, say, for example, you had a big carb load meal last night that was, again, low glycemic.
Just like a sweet potato.
So say, for example, like when I do it for me, I'll use for me.
Sweet potato and dessert, maybe?
So I don't do a dessert because I don't want to do anything that's going to spike my insulin. So I'll have sweet potato. I'll use a butter on it. I always put cinnamon on everything, which lowers the glycemic responses of foods. And then I'll also have a cup of oatmeal, and maybe I'll have like a banana, and the banana is the most glycemic thing that I would have, right?
So if we're throwing around numbers, we're looking at what, 150?
Probably
something like that.
Probably I stay under
people
200.
always want those numbers.
Yeah.
And
for guys, I say max your number out around the 180 to 200, and for ladies, I generally say max your number out around 120. Right? Try to stay in that range, 80 to 120. Right? So obviously, if you're leaner, if you're more active, depending on what your body mass index is, and those kind of things, then you're going to adjust up or down. So anyway, you can buy the book and read all that stuff. But my point being is, now today, not having that energy source, my body's going, hey, what are we doing? Right? So it's looking for information. And if what I'm feeding it is that we're going back into a ketogenic state, and I'm doing that by flooding the body with dietary fats, right? Then the body's going, hey, this is what we got to work with. This is what we'll take, right? You're programming it to think, this is what I got to work with. This is what I'm going to do, So by continuing that cycle over and over, and as the way that the studies have found and that we used in the book is every 5 days. That is the point at where the brain chemical response is the most optimized.
Yeah, where's the first place I heard this about every 5 days?
Was that a long time ago?
Yeah,
with our original keto diet that we did was like that.
Our original keto diet was a little bit like that, but remember, Big Will was into that too.
Oh yeah, well, Big Will was more
Harris.
Big Will Harris or World Harris. He was more of a 72-hour ketogenic guy.
Well, and you know what? So it's interesting that you say that, because the more optimized you get, I believe in shortening that window. So for me, I do it every 72 hours.
Yeah, and I'm a believer too that when you do a ketogenic style diet, or when you are low carb for a long period of time, or you're low carb veterans as we have become, then you can start to have some carbs. And it's not going to really, we don't have 200-300 grams of carbs. It's not in one sitting.
Yeah,
and we're not knocking out a big old
25 or 30. Yeah,
but we'll have an orange. I had some sweet potatoes this
I'm
morning.
I'm actually about
breakfast.
to move into something more like your 25 days program.
Great.
I've been losing. I lost a lot of body fat.
Oh, now all of a sudden it's about him.
Yeah.
See how he did that?
I'm just
See how he
saying.
did that? Now it's a podcast with
That's
him.
all right. That's
No,
all right.
What I'm saying
Any
is I've
questions
gotten
for him,
I've gotten to a point where I feel like now it's time to maybe introduce some carbs, because I've been doing keto for such a long time, and then now it's sort of has stopped.
Right.
I did carnivore for a long time. Now that's kind of come to a halt, and now it's time to change things up a little bit.
Right.
And I've been going back and looking through some of your stuff.
Yeah, all
looking
diets
through the
will come to a
vertical.
halt at some point.
Looking
right?
through the vertical diet, which is like Stan Efferding. There's a lot of similarities there, and thinking about carbon up. But I've also heard people we've been doing these interviews for this film there, and I'd say, well, what about cyclical keto?
Yeah.
And half the people say, yeah, cyclical is great. That's the way to do it. And the other half are saying, why would you waste your time doing all this work to get into ketosis and then just blow it?
Right. And I understand that thought process, and I've heard a lot of that stuff too. And typically when someone says that, I say, what is your exertion level? What are you actually doing?
Yeah.
Right? Because if the most exerting thing that you're doing is sitting in front of a computer, then fine, just stay where you're at, right? But for those of us that are, trying to continue to elevate or maintain as we age our athletic prowess, it makes sense to continually get the body to be looking for the most efficient source of energy.
Sure.
Right?
I also think it makes sense to balance
Yeah.
going in and out of ketosis
It absolutely
a little bit.
does.
I don't think you got to register, 3 millimolars of ketones or what.
Well,
I don't think
there
it
is
matters.
there is no real evidence, and they haven't done it yet. The study where they're doing really cyclical versus straight on keto versus a regular diet.
Yeah.
those things haven't been done yet, really.
And I've seen some of those vague studies on thoughts around is which one's better, one or the other. And quite frankly, I say try them both, and then see based on what your outcome that that people want to do.
Sure, and
what do you want it to be? Are you trying to get leaner? Are you trying to perform better? Or are you just trying to feel better? And here's another thing too, right? People don't pay enough attention to what the true measuring sticks are of the ways that we are active and the ways that we eat. And some of those are you sleeping efficiently? How many hours? And are you resting, right? Because all the food in the world and the water and all that other stuff that we preach and talk about all the time if you're not sleeping effectively, it doesn't matter, right? And so there are a lot of things that play into.
There's also the fact that if your sleep may be disrupted because you have a shitty diet.
That's exactly right. That's what I was going to get into. Yeah. So, when you're getting into that point, and really they have determined that they used to say that the REM sleep was the area that was, and they've actually gone a step beyond that to determine that the deep sleep is really the most recovery promoting and restful part of the night, which some people aren't staying in that deep sleep even 30 minutes. Well, for someone that has a shitty diet, they might not ever get in deep sleep. And your indicator should be, if you wake up tired, something's not right.
If I'm too keto, if I'm not eating any carbs at all, I'll pee throughout the night.
Yeah.
Kind of constantly. I'll wake up 5, 6 times. Wake up a lot. Just a little bit of carbs, just an orange a day, an apple a day, an occasional sweet potato, like 2-3 times a week.
Right.
Makes the biggest difference for me.
Absolutely. And I think that as a person, we talked about this earlier, but you have to look at your foods and you have to go, what am I using them for? So you're talking about, Chris, you're talking about maybe adding back into some carbs. And I think that's a good idea. I think the timing of it and what you want them to do. Right?
That's what I was going to ask you, because if I'm going to do this, I need some advice. Right. So when carbs?
Okay. So what I would have you do, first thing to remember, right? Carbs really can form 2 different scenarios. If you're insulin responding high, insulin is our most, powerful, most anabolic, most powerful hormone in our body. If what you're trying to do is grow, right, then it would make sense that you need to have a carbohydrate immediately after lifting, right? Because you want to spike your insulin.
Sure.
Okay. And I'll come back to that. But there's an interesting kind of dichotomy that exists in the ability for these 2 things to happen. If you take something within probably the first 30 to 45 minutes post-workout that elevates your insulin, you're negating the fact that you're going to get the natural growth hormone spike that exists, right? So you have to go one or the other, right? Am I going to get the insulin response, or do I want the growth hormone spike? And
which steroid do I want?
Yeah, exactly. So for those of you that are knowing what I'm going to get into, and maybe you read Dan Duchesne's book, you're going to understand that there's a reason why a lot of people that use human growth hormone for performance enhancing also will use insulin, as a driver, right? Because the presence of them both is extremely anabolic, right? So, but if we're talking about just doing it with food, you have to determine which one of these you want to go with. So that would be my first thing. And then the second thing would be, if what you're measuring isn't that you're trying to maybe, for example, grow or strength, what you're trying to do is perform. Like, say, for example, you want to, like you're like a football player.
I want to lift something heavier.
Yeah, right. Well, then it would make sense to have the carbohydrate prior.
I actually am trying to get leaner. So actually kind of neither one of those really.
Well, if what I was trying to do, if I was trying to get leaner, is I would use the carbohydrate again. I would be a low glycemic carbohydrate, but I would make sure, and this is another thing that's important to remember, I would make sure I loaded in the carb a couple hours before the activity. It's most important the amount of water that you have that's present when the carb is there, right?
Really?
Yeah, I think.
And how much water per carb?
Well,
gram of
it's
carbs
not
or whatever.
If you have excess water, you're just going to whiz it out. So I say drink as much as you possibly can, right?
So just drink till you're
much as you can, right? Because what you want is the glycogen to bond with water to create ATP in the muscle, right? And that's what your energy is. So if what you're trying to do is you're trying to get energy, and people go, well, what supplements can I use? Well, creatine helps to expand that. You know what I mean? And it's pretty simple.
It's one of the very few supplements that's been proven to be effective for most people.
I'll tell you this: you take post-workout carbs. Some of the popular, there's all these weird cyclic dextrins and all this crazy shit out there now, right? Take one of those popular brands. Take 100, 200 grams of carbs post-workout, and tell me what you feel.
Yeah,
you're probably not going to really feel. You're probably not going to feel anything. You might feel that your blood sugar feels out of whack, like you feel like cold and sweaty or whatever. You might get that. If you ingest 200 grams of carbs about 3 hours before you work out, 2 hours before you work out, with some water and some salt.
That's right.
Then tell me how you feel.
That's exactly right.
Even if it's a fucking bagel, I used to eat sounds crazy now to look back at it, but I used to eat, I called them bench bagels.
That's
And I
funny.
had bagels with salt, and I didn't have any cream cheese or anything like that on them.
Yeah.
Just ate them just like that
Yeah.
before training sessions. And I had extra water on my body.
Yeah.
It made me feel like a fucking bull. It made me feel strong.
And he looked amazing at 3:30, by the way. He looked so great.
Sex machine.
It was hot, yeah.
Looked like Gunter.
Yeah, it was.
No, I think you have to determine what is it you're trying to accomplish, right? So the short answer is, if what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to grow, then a post-workout carb makes sense. If what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to perform, then a pre-workout carb makes sense. And one thing I want to tell you about post-workout carbs, it's not the amount of carb that you're trying to get, it's the amount of insulin response that you're trying to get, right? And so for people that are low carb, but they're concerned about, they want the insulin response, but they're concerned about having the excess carb in their system not being used up, the absolute best dietary training tool that you can do is eat a freaking rice cake.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the glycemic scale, you're a 10 calorie rice cake shoots your blood sugar higher than a tablespoon of table sugar, right? I mean, it's higher than glycerin.
But it's also no calories, so it's
virtually
like it's not really doing
non-existent.
shit to you.
So it's not doing anything. All it's doing is just driving your insulin up through the roof.
So would you even recommend, like, even having, like, would that work even if you're in
candy? Even I mean, is that
right? Well, it's the same premise, although with say, for example, with a rice cake, you don't have any of the calorie and none of the sugar that's involved. Right?
Would that work though? On so for example, if I'm doing a ketogenic diet and say I had a rice cake after I trained, would that help me put on some size?
It absolutely would. It would help you from a recovery standpoint and make you very anabolic.
Yeah,
right?
and it probably wouldn't
have to worry
do
about
anything to throw you out of ketosis or anything. It's still only 10
It won't
carbs
throw
or
you out.
something.
It won't throw you out of ketosis, but it may not even be that many carbs. It won't throw you out of ketosis, but it will spike your insulin.
Yeah, that's
up.
really interesting.
Right.
I haven't heard anything like that.
So I've probably used that since the late '90s. In fact, my mentor was an old bodybuilder and Olympic lifter in the '50s. Ron Lacey was the 1957 Mr. America and '58 Universe. And he trained me as a kid growing up. So before I could ever, do anything, he made me learn how to squat with a broomstick on my back. You know what
That's
I mean?
how I learned. Yeah,
I mean, I had no weight, and I wasn't allowed to do anything with weight until I got my forms correct and stuff. But he's the one that just said, you're low carbing, you're getting ready for because I competed, bodybuilding, for a few years, and he was like, rice cake right after your meal, and then And I'm sure he didn't know the science behind it, I mean, he just knew that it worked. And then as I began to investigate why it worked, and I've turned a lot of people onto it, and man, that's a game changer.
Yeah, it just sounds really interesting.
I've been helping people too with, dropping weight, and then people, that want to still continue to power lift and try to keep their strength. And something I kind of stumbled upon over the years was that you can allow some carbohydrates. I think some people think, and maybe on your plan, maybe it's slightly different, but some people think keto, like I'm going zero, like not eating hardly.
I don't agree with that.
Not eating hardly any. And I think from a discipline standpoint, it could have some merit maybe in the beginning to be a little bit strict on yourself and to work hard and all that for some of us that are a little bit Looney Tune with our mindset, right? But I think in general, I think that what you'll learn is, especially when you start to lose body fat, you start to change your body composition, then you're allowed to have more carbohydrates. You got more room for some carbohydrates.
It makes sense for sure. And I think that I'm not a zero carb teetotaler. What I am is a smarter carb, approach. And a lot of people think that the only thing that are carbs are, like you said, bagels or potatoes. And quite frankly, broccoli is still a carbohydrate, right? It's just a different kind of carbohydrate. An apple is still a carbohydrate, right? It's just a different kind of carbohydrate. They're fibrous. They are low glycemic. I try to teach everybody to stay, if you're looking at a glycemic index, there's a glycemic index of all the foods in the back of my book. But like if you're looking at the index and you say, well, where do I want to stay? Well, I try to teach everybody to stay in the 40s or below, right? For a scale rating for a glycemic index. And it's really about your net carbs more so than the actual carb that you're taking, right? So, I mean, you can eat a bucket full of cauliflower. Nothing's going to happen to you.
Right.
You might be a little farty, but but nothing's really going to happen.
Some people have dismissed the glycemic index. Why do you choose to still utilize it?
Well, because I think that it controls insulin, right? And if you have an elevated level of insulin, it is impossible to utilize fat as energy.
So even though people have kind of discovered like, oh, if you mix it with fat and protein, it changes it a little bit, you're still using it as a guideline.
Well, the reason why is because it's really about hormone control, right? Gotcha. So can you mitigate some of that by introducing a higher level of fats at the same time? You can, but you can't negate it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you take a tablespoon of sugar and mix it with a tablespoon of butter, your blood sugar is still going up. It doesn't matter, right?
Right. And it's not like you made it better for yourself by taking in a bunch of fat.
Yeah. I mean, it's not the way it works. So what you have to do, and by the way,
well, it slows the absorption, right?
It does slow the absorption.
Yeah, but
right?
that still doesn't negate it, is what you're saying.
Right. It doesn't negate it, right? So it does slow the absorption.
We'd all be shredded if it worked.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. I would love it. I would
eating candy bars,
but
pizza.
just put more butter in a candy bar and it's fine, right? No, I wish that were the case. But what you have to do is you have to control the hormones and listen. And we said this earlier. We were talking about taking exogenous ketones versus what your body is actually producing. If you're keeping your insulin levels low and you're increasing insulin sensitivity, your body is naturally producing ketones anyway, right? So what you're doing is you're sending a signal to the brain, hey, and this is where I'll segue into where my book came from. You're sending a signal to the brain that says, hey, let's use fat as energy. That is the more efficient energy provider. It lasts longer, right? So the interesting and wonderful thing I think about fat is that we can use it as almost a jet fuel kind of energy, but it also is one of the macronutrients responsible for recovery on a cellular level. Carbohydrates are not used for recovery at all. They're short-term energy, right? So if you're not using them up, what happens? They're going to become fat, right?
Yeah.
So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're keeping your insulin levels low so that the body can use fat as energy. It has to be able to identify that. So even when I do load carbohydrates in or encourage people to do so, they're very low glycemic.
What do you think a lot of Americans are making? We're the fattest country in the world.
God, I know.
And
I think Mexico has us beat, don't they?
No, we actually beat Mexico.
Did we?
Yeah.
In 2018?
God damn.
Can't beat it in soccer, but by God, we're fatter.
Yeah. But what do you think? What do you think we're doing wrong? As a culture.
We're right.
As a society. Yeah.
Yeah. Or at least we're winning at something. We can't read, but it's interesting that you asked that question because I had this conversation the other day with somebody that the 2018 statistics came out for being overweight and obese. And we're approaching the 30% mark on obesity, and we're around the 70% mark in being overweight.
Overweight, yeah. It's bad.
Unbelievable. So you figure every 7 out of 10 people is overweight. I remember when I'm older than, I'm 44. And,
I'm a year older than you.
Yeah. So you remember when we were in school, think about being in elementary school. There was maybe one kid, in each person's class that was the quote unquote fat kid, right? There was.
Yeah. And we talk about this. Everybody knew his name.
Were heavy, and there was one kid who was real big.
But that was it. But if you go to a classroom now, and I know my mom's a teacher and was for, all our adult life basically. And she's seen it over the decades. It's now the fit kid is the exception to the rule, right? It's not the fat kid that's the exception to the rule, right? There are a lot of
who's this kid that can run and why can he run?
He must get made fun of so bad for being in shape.
Yeah, what's wrong with him?
Well, how is he able to do that?
Exactly. So I think we could do an entire podcast just on this ridiculousness, but I think it's really starting out with we're programming our bodies and we're doing it to kids, right? They're in a confined environment. There aren't healthy options, and there's no education around healthy options.
There's so much convenient foods around. I read a statistic the other day, and we can have statistics show us whatever we want, but It said the average American male adult has ingest about 50 grams of fructose a day. That's just fructose.
Right.
Obviously, there's a lot of other things. Americans since 2012 have ingested less sugar, still ingesting a lot of carbs, which turn into sugar in our body. We already know some of these things. And I think they said like about 50 milligrams they consider to be toxic of fructose. And again, we're not really just talking about specifically from fruit.
Right.
Fruit has fiber and other cofactors that help you digest it and break it down. And
yeah, we're not getting fat from eating too much fruit. Yeah, that's not the problem. That's not it.
So we can block that out of our head. However, our children are having 75 grams of fructose per day.
Right.
And I thought that to be like staggering. I thought it to be sad too.
Yeah.
And it's difficult. You know, being a parent is a hard thing.
Right.
It's not an easy thing to do. And I think there's a lot of people that are, you know, the world is moving fast. Things are moving fast.
Yeah.
I think people are kind of living behind. People are getting to bed later than they should, waking up later than they should. It's a cyclical thing that keeps happening over and over again. You're running behind. You grab X, Y, and Z for your kid for lunch for the next day, and it's not what we used to eat, and it's making kids fatter and fatter. Running into some of these major problems.
I think it is too, and you know what's funny? People think. I mean, we talked about Lucky Dog earlier. I have 3 dogs, and when people meet me, and I'll walk all 3 dogs at the same time, they're like, well, I cannot believe how disciplined and how mannerly your dogs are. And I'm like, yeah, because that's the way I train them to be. So I think about where that came from for me. Obviously, I've learned a little bit about dog training and stuff over the years, but I grew up, I didn't have an opinion, right? I didn't get to say, this sucks, Dad, I really want a Twinkie. And he said, hey, okay, I don't want you to be upset, and please don't be, don't throw a tantrum. Let's give you a Twinkie. You know, that wasn't even a cognitive thought. Like, I wasn't, first off, I wasn't going to tell my dad, I hate this,
you
give
didn't
me
need
a
to be told, shut the fuck up and eat your whatever.
No, I didn't have to be told that because I was like, hey,
this is what we have.
I'm eating. This is what we got. You know what I mean? And so I think that being able to be firm and still be kind. A lot of people think that if you're firm or if you say no, that in some way that is abusive or neglectful and that's just bullshit, right? I mean, like, as a parent, you have a responsibility to educate them on what is right and what is wrong. I mean, you teach them to look both ways when they cross the street, right?
Yeah, hang on to grab the handrail when you're going down the stairs.
Yeah, I mean, you teach them those things, right? And hold my hand, I mean, you teach them those kinds of things. Then why the hell wouldn't you teach them? That sucks, dude. Don't eat that. Let's have an apple, right? That's bad for you. It's not going to be good. Now, when I was a kid, it wasn't like I was being taught nutrition. I wasn't. Right. I wasn't being taught nutrition. It was just a simple, you're not having that.
But you were led by example, so your father ate pretty well. Pretty good.
Well, we always ate healthy, but I grew up in the South, right? So I mean, there's butter on everything.
Biscuits everywhere.
There's bread in every meal. I mean, literally.
There's still a huge difference, though, eating at home versus eating out.
Absolutely.
And having all the conveniences. Absolutely. I think even if mom was to make up a big old steak dinner or meatloaf with potatoes and
spaghetti,
things like that,
something, yeah.
I think it's still a way better option than rolling through
it is.
McDonald's and having 2 cheeseburgers, fries,
let me tell you
shake, and all that stuff.
Let me tell you what I honestly believe is the better. Yeah, I'll tell you the thing that I think is actually even better than the choice of the food. And this is going to sound kind of crazy, and I don't want to go too far off on a tangent, but you roll through McDonald's and you grab food to fill a need. You're not even present, right? When we sat down at the dinner table every night, we were present at what was going on. We weren't on our cell phones because there was no freaking thing in the 70s. There was no damn cell phones. We weren't, if the phone rang hanging on the wall, we weren't allowed to answer it, right? It just rang. It didn't matter if you're friend was calling you or whatever.
Don't even look at it.
Yeah, you're just going to ring, right? Or my dad would disconnect it.
Did you have to be asked to get excused from the dinner table?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. May I be?
We had all those rules.
May I be excused? And we were present all the time. And so there was, I mean, it wasn't that we were sitting down and having kale and couscous. Like, I mean, like we ate a lot of spaghetti, you know what I mean? And we had a lot of Southern foods. We ate a lot of roast and potatoes, and all that kind of stuff. And, it wasn't that. It was that we were actually present and there was a cognitive thought behind what we were having for dinner, you know what I mean? And what's going on in your life, you know what I mean?
Much deeper connection. And one can argue, I would imagine that even if they did studies on something like that, I'm going to imagine and just assume that you probably digest those foods a little bit better when you're sitting there concentrating on eating it rather than like chomping on something on the go.
Well, how many times have we, and we've all done it, how many times have we eaten something on the go in our car, finished the food, and not even realize you'd finished the food, and go to grab for it again and go, oh, it's gone. And like, you didn't remember that you just ate it. You're like, oh shit, I'm out of it.
Happens all the time at In-N-Out.
Yeah, exactly. Like I just
the worst.
I'm out of it.
I friggin' inhaled those 3 Big Macs.
It makes
exactly.
you so
you don't
fat.
even remember.
Like the guy's like, well, you want to eat this in the car? You're like, oh, geez. Don't ask me in front of people.
Yeah. So the question that you started down the Lucky Dog's running off here. Hey, Lucky,
get back here.
Come here, buddy. He's going to check out the outside here. The question you were asking is how the book came about. So for me, after the cardiac arrests, I was in a coma for 3 days. And
what was some of that like? I mean, were you
I don't know.
cognitive at all? Or?
I wasn't. And so
was there any pain previously?
No, and with cardiac arrest there is no pain because the opposing chambers of your heart beat in a push-pull fashion, right? And with a heart attack, one side is clogged and so it seizes and the other side pulls or pushes.
So this is not a clogged artery situation.
This
is something different.
Just turning out the circuit breaker, it just stops moving and you're dead. There's no pain.
Didn't you tell me it's like an electrical issue?
It's an electrical malfunction. Yeah. So it's just like turning off a light switch. It just, I was mid-conversation and out.
And so it's just genetic. It has nothing to do with what you've eaten or what you've done.
It has nothing to do with that. Generally, it's genetic. Mine did not happen to be genetic. They ultimately ruled that it was stress-induced.
Stress-induced,
yeah. Which causes a misrhythm. And if your misrhythm gets even a nanosecond, eventually it can cause a misfire, right? And so there have been a lot of it actually happens a lot to athletes, right? So that wasn't uncommon. But after that, because I had been without oxygen to my brain when I was revived, my lungs had shut down. My brain had shut my lungs down, and so I wasn't breathing. So they'd intubate me with a big tube, stick down in my lungs, and bag, where they breathe the bag. And but I ended up having 2 more, and then being on a ventilator because my brain hadn't re-engaged my lungs. So I was on the machine that basically breathes for you, to keep you alive for 3 days. And then on the 3rd day, I just kind of came to as though nothing had ever happened. But what was still prevailing was I had no short-term memory. So I didn't know who my family was. I didn't know who my girlfriend was. I didn't, and she just saved my life, right? I didn't know who she was. And ultimately what ended up that came back to me after the course of the week. But looking back at that time, there are 2 months of my life I can't remember. So that happened October the 4th. The first memory that I can recall to this day is Thanksgiving, which is late, like the 28th or something of November, like basically
so
2 months.
You don't remember
later.
anything from the hospital necessarily?
Nothing. And like, for example, we were at a Halloween party and I've seen pictures of myself. I have no recollection of being there. You know what I mean? So for most people that can't remember stuff, it was like, your fraternity years. But for me, it was after that period of time. So, but in relation to the book, I went back to work. I'd already been a strength coach and trainer for over 10 years at the point. And so when I went back to work, I had no recall of how to create a program or a diet or anything kind of on the fly. I could sit down with textbooks and take hours and go, oh yeah, right. That makes sense.
Dude, that sucks. People are like, what do I do? You're like, I don't remember.
I don't have any idea. Like, coach,
I don't know anything about training. I'm just jacked.
Yeah, right. Hey, coach, what am I supposed to do? I was like, I have no idea. So
is there anything weird that stuck out that you did remember?
Like for example, the simple stuff, right? The how-tos, I could remember how to. Right?
How to drive, how to walk.
Yeah. Or even back in the gym, I could remember how to function, how to do it.
How to do the
how to do the exercises, all that stuff was there. What wasn't there was how to put it together to help somebody get an outcome that they wanted. And quite frankly, most clients aren't educated enough to know that I was winging it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but I knew.
What a wild thing to go through, and probably helped like accelerate your learning process again. I mean, it sounds like it sucks because it's all zapped from you, but to relearn it again.
Well, so
cool.
some of it came back on its own as my memory repaired itself. But I did have to spend some time studying again, right? So I would go back to textbooks and reread stuff that I'd read before, and it felt like I was reading it for the first time. But when I began to realize that my retention was very high, then I started going, oh, I've read this before, right? And then so ultimately what I ended up doing in order to be able to have a way of working with my clients is that I'm going to create a cheat sheet for me. Chris comes in, he's on day 7. Mark comes in, he's on day 13. I know based on the 25-day program that I created, I know where you should be and what you should be doing, both nutritionally and in exercise. So I created this 5-day program that cycled 5 times around for 25 days. And that was a complete cycle. And then we kind of retool and we do again, right? And so what that allowed me to do was to keep a handle on where everybody was and what the expectations should be in that timeline. Many years later, I started using that in 2005, early 2005. And probably 10 years later, I was working with there was a Navy doctor. He was a friend. And he said, I want you to get tested for a mild brain trauma. He said, because I think the lack of oxygen to your brain may have had a brain trauma, similar to like a soldier who gets, maybe blown across the road and hits his head on something. Kind of a concussive thing. And he said, I want you to get tested for that, which I did. And I did have a mild brain trauma due to lack of oxygen. But the interesting thing is that it would manifest itself. That was my Lambo going by there. Andy Frisella, if you're listening, that was my Lambo. I had a hard time controlling sudden emotions, right? So you might go, Drew's got PTSD. Nope, don't have PTSD. It was literally triggers within the brain, right, that were causing that, from the mild brain trauma. So I began working with this therapist that had worked with people before that she would give me exercises that would help to control that. And then once I could identify it and control it, over a period of time, it just got better and better, right, and healed itself, frankly. But she said, what do you do for a living? And I told her, and I said, I have this program called 25 Days that I would love to write a book about. And she said, well, tell me more about it. And so I explained it to her, and she said, what you've just described is what's called neurological patterning, or basically expediting a habit process on a brain level, which means you are nutritionally and physically figuring out a hack, if you will, to speed up the process of creating a habit by kind of controlling the brain chemicals, dopamine, serotonin, et cetera, et cetera. And so I thought, well, that's neat, but I'd never heard that. So she pointed me to a bunch of studies. I went down that path of studying that stuff. And then ultimately what we came up with was a very successful book, 25 Days, a proven program to rewire your brain, stop weight gain, and finally crush the habits you hate forever. And the book is based on the ways that our brains react in nutrition stimulus and then also from a physical stimulus. And if we do it within this pattern over this 25-day period, then we can actually create a positive neurological pattern where maybe a negative one has persisted over and over. And people go, well, how would I know if a negative one? Well, have you ever yo-yo dieted? That's a negative neurological pattern. Have you ever started something and didn't finish? That's a negative neurological pattern. Did you have a habit you couldn't break that was bad? Negative neurological pattern. So by building a positive neurological pattern, you're putting yourself in the space where the outcome is going to be obviously very healthy, but it makes it easier to break the bad habits if positive habits are in place. So it sounds extremely scientific, but it's
actually interesting to me because
it doesn't.
In the sobriety world, with what I went through, we just call it being mindful.
That's exactly right.
We say replace your old habits with something more mindful. So if your habit was to drink after work, now your habit's to go to the gym after work.
And it's funny that you draw that parallel, and you're 100% right. Over the years, I've got to work with, and you would know this, the Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotic Anonymous community remain anonymous very well. I mean, there are some people that will talk openly about it, but you've probably never ever said another person that you happen to also know, right? Because you keep that very close to your vest.
It's really weird because even sometimes when I introduce people, I introduced Mark to my friend at the gym today, but I didn't want to tell him in front of my friend that I know him from AA because you're not supposed to.
Right.
It's like, how do you know this guy? Oh, well, I know him from AA. And then the guy's like, shut the fuck up. You're not supposed to tell anybody.
Right.
So it's like, it is a very secret society. And so the ones that do talk about it is important to get it out
almost like
there.
a medical condition. Sometimes things are private.
Absolutely. I agree.
For some people, there's a lot of consequence to letting people know that you have a problem.
And so what happened for me in the late 90s is I worked with two guys that were part of the family, as I think you all call each other. And they were very successful in achieving their health and fitness goals. And then they told other people, and that began to snowball. And over the years, I've been able to work with a lot of celebrities in their recovery process. Because what happens a lot of time is that one habit gets replaced with another one that isn't a good one, right? I don't think I've gone to some AA meetings in support of my friends, and I've never been to one that didn't have a table full of cookies and cakes and
it's awful.
Crap.
I mean,
people smoke a lot, right?
The one thing that I was always trying to change about that was those things. Like you go there and there's, addictive vices everywhere, and you have, you're there with coffee, cigarettes, and candy.
Yeah.
And you're like, what are we doing?
Yeah, why not hookers?
We're just going right through.
Why not hookers?
Some places there are. Some places have those.
I mean, but my point is that from and they may have not have known this when they started, but from a standpoint of reassociation of habits on a neuro level, that actually is quite smart.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you can figure out how to do it from a health standpoint, then not only can you beat habits like that, but obviously it takes discipline. It's not magic. You know what I mean? But you can give yourself a winning edge, right? Yeah. And so that's really how I wrote the book and why I wrote the book. And as you will attest after having read it, it doesn't sound like a bunch of science that I've just, spit out here for the last hour. It actually sounds like me telling you, hey, listen, you want to read all the science that's in the second half of the chapter, but if you just want to get to work, this is the way to do it.
Yeah.
So it's very simple. Helps build upon itself. You know, when you do a low carb, and that's why I always think, if we can figure out a way to teach our children to be more mindful of food and people that are just kids in general, maybe we can solve some of the problems of obesity and diabetes and stuff. But in my opinion, the only thing that's really going to fight it, because I don't think we can ever really totally stop it. We've gotten way too fat. Yeah. Hopefully we can reverse some of it. And I think the main way to do it is through a war on carbs, is through something like this, a cyclical low carb lifestyle, because we just have too much temptation around us. It's just sitting there all the time. And what you said about going to McDonald's was actually really interesting, because it is kind of like a give up almost.
It is.
Like, I'm just kind of giving up.
Okay, I'm phoning it in for this meal.
Yeah.
Well, you're like starving, so you're like, I'm just pulling through McDonald's, but you don't realize what you're actually doing to yourself.
We need to be strong. We need to be stronger. Like, it's not really about being a pussy or any of that kind of stuff, but we need to be stronger. We need to respect ourselves a little bit more.
I think that's more it than being stronger. It's like, respect yourself.
Yeah, respect yourself and realize you do have a lot of decisions, and these decisions can really empower you.
Yeah.
They can really they can really build a lot of strength and willpower.
Yeah.
And you can rely on that willpower in your time of need, because we all have our ups and downs, and there's going to be times where you're going to want that ice cream or.
So you guys will think this is funny, but like to the people listening and to everyone else, I want you to think about how many times you have made a decision, and we'll use McDonald's as the example, but then after you get done laughing at this, step back and think about how many things that you've done in your entire life. And right before you did it, your thought was, fuck it. You know what I mean?
It's the last time.
Right? Exactly. And you go, fuck it. And then you do whatever the thing is, right? Yeah. And generally, nothing in your life has ever happened good right after, fuck it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I call it the fuck it factor. Yeah. So if your decision process goes, fuck it, I'm going to McDonald's. Fuck it, nothing good ever happens after that. You know what I mean? And so if you really think about like, what are you doing and what's your decision process, and go, fuck it. Oh no, I probably shouldn't do that, whatever that is. You know what I mean? Fill in the blank with whatever that is. And that's super freaking easy.
We had a rule as kids just to keep us out of trouble. And my dad truly believes this. He would always say, nothing good ever happens after 11 p.m. So it means don't be out after 11 p.m., right? So it's the same thing as your, fuck it. Like nothing good's going to come of that.
Exactly. Kind of the
and
same
when
thing.
I think about it, I don't know if anything great has happened past 11 p.m.
or past, fuck it.
Nothing life-changing ever happens after that.
Yeah, right. So anyway, so that's kind of my thought around, how that needs to, and more so than the educational process, because here's the interesting thing, and why I think my book has been successful, and people go, well, was it a famous fitness book? Not only was it a famous fitness book, it was the number 3 book in the world. I literally outsold Hillary Clinton.
There you go.
Awesome. I outsold J.K. Rowling. I outsold John Grisham and Stephen King, and Tom Brady's crap of a book.
A bunch of nobodies, it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. A bunch of nobodies. And I love Tom Brady, but his book sucks.
What's his book about, being vegan?
Yeah, no, it was terrible. I don't know what it was. Something. It was awful, right? It was awful from an application standpoint. And I love Tom. But anyway, my point is that the reason why I think it's been so successful is it's the dissemination of information in a way that it can be used, right? We're living in a time when there is more information than there has ever been in the history of the world. So we're not running short on know-how or running short on opportunities or options to do. What we're running short on is somebody that just cuts to the chase, tells you like it freaking is, and gives you a straightforward plan that goes, do this, do this, do this, do this. To hell with the rest of it. Yes, it all makes sense too, but pick something and stick with it. And I think therein lies the rub of why people aren't being more successful. Somebody goes, hey, should I do CrossFit? I'm like, I don't care if you do CrossFit, if you do powerlifting, bodybuilding, if you become a runner, if you do Richard Simmons sweating to the oldies, but commit to it, stay in it all the freaking time, do it day in, day out, actually have something that represents a program that you're committed to, and you're going to see change. I don't care what it is. So it's not about one specific discipline. That said, I like to say I'm in the obstacle elimination business, right? And that's the way I wrote the book. So, for example, I put a workout in there that is a kind of an A-B type of zigzag workout. And I said, I am purposely going to put a workout in here that people can do anywhere, right? Because if I'm training you, if I come to your house and you're listening right now in Sioux City, Iowa, and you're like, well, I don't have a nice big Gold's Gym here. Fine. I could beat the life out of you in your living room floor with no weights, right? And so I wanted to create a workout that could exist that you could do anywhere. And the workouts that I put in the book, I think I have a band, and I think I have a set of dumbbells. That's the only thing I have, right? And I've been on movie sets. I trained several of the actors for the Hunger Games, and I've done these workouts, on movie sets. I've been on television sets and trained people. I've been on the road I was on the road with Florida Georgia Line, one of the biggest, acts in the world right now, and I beat those guys up backstage and out by the buses and so on. We didn't have a gym. We did these kind of workouts, and it's big central nervous system stuff. You can knock it out.
I think that's a great message to send to a lot of trainers too. Is like,
yeah,
you better know how to work somebody out without any equipment.
You absolutely
better know that, or you're not a great trainer.
Exercise doesn't always have to be this big event. For you
to
get
it's not.
Exercise.
No.
We got done with Joe Rogan yesterday, and afterwards we were just kind of driving around, and my friend's gym is right there, so we stopped in. It's called Zoo Culture. And we were just shooting the shit with some of the guys that work there and stuff. And I was like, let's just.
Yeah, we just grabbed an extra workout.
Like, let's
some
just
triceps and back.
We didn't do shit. You know, we did I think 6 sets.
I actually didn't want to do it. I was like,
Yeah, we did like 6 sets of 3 different movements. It probably took like 15 minutes, maybe.
But it felt great.
But the point is, your exercise doesn't always have to be this hard thing. It doesn't have to be 20 full blast hill sprints.
Right.
When you're at work and you're on and you have some calls to make.
Right.
Hop on the phone, but go for a walk while you're on the phone.
That's exactly
business
right.
Meetings and stuff like that.
I'm looking up some statistics, and I want to share
keep
these.
Moving, but exercise doesn't have to be so goddamn
Speaking
hard.
of going for a walk, what's great about your book is it's also an audio book, which I always recommend to people because we do our 10-minute walks. And I think
can't read for shit on a 10-minute walk.
Well,
you fall into a manhole.
You listen, so you just listen. So you just listen to it.
That's right.
And by listening to 25 days on 10-minute walks, I think it took like 4 or 5 days to get through because I do 3 walks a day or whatever. Sure. And then also I throw it on like just randomly when I'm doing stuff around the house or whatever. But I really do believe that for a lot of people, that's an obstacle. Like reading a book is an obstacle.
Right.
For me, it's a huge obstacle. Like if somebody hands me a book, I make the excuse I don't have time to read it, which is just a lie. I don't like to read, so I like to listen. So for anybody that's watching this, go get the audio book.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Awesome
it's expedited. And listen, if you're listening, you're watching, whatever the case may be, and you're like, I don't know how I feel about this workout thing. Maybe you've just discovered Mark and his podcast and that kind of stuff. I think pretty much everybody would like to have more money. I don't know anybody, and I know a lot of rich guys, but I don't know anybody that wouldn't like to have more of it, right? But I can tell you this, that the annual reduction costs in healthcare annually, if Americans only got 150 minutes a week of exercise, which is walking 21 minutes, 7 days a week. What do you all think the annual healthcare reduction costs would be? What do you think that is?
The annual for each person?
No, as a whole.
As a whole?
Just Americans.
I have no idea.
$117 billion, right?
Well,
if you walked 21 minutes, if every single person walked 21 minutes a day, 7 days a week in America, then there would be $117 billion less in healthcare costs. Now, it doesn't mean we're going to be billionaires if we start doing walks, but if you want to go, hey, how much did I spend in healthcare last year? Do the math. I don't know what the number is, right? But increasing to a 21-minute walk, in some respect, scientifically proven, would reduce that cost. You put more money in your pocket, right? So, and that's a simple, easy thing to do. Another thing, if you're sitting at a desk, for every 90 minutes you're sitting, get up and move around for 9. Right. Yep. So if you're sitting for 9, move up, get around. If you're sitting for 90, get up for 9. Right. Go to the water fountain. Go to a different floor in your office building and go to the bathroom there and walk back. You're going to waste 9 minutes, checking your Instagram. You know what I mean? There are simple tasks. When you wake up, first thing, drink 20 ounces of water before you do anything else. Period. There are simple tips and tricks that you can do all the time that are going to help you exponentially become more healthy. It's not about
why does drinking 20 ounces of water make you more healthy? What's that going to do?
So when we're asleep, we're respiring, right? So you ever go up to a glass and you breathe on the glass? There's water. There's moisture in our breath, right? If you're asleep in 7 or 8 hours, you're not drinking water. First of all, you're respiring. What you're actually doing is you're dehydrating yourself, right? So when you wake up, the first thing is that you need water for the digestive system and for the organs to actually function properly, right?
Because you just let out a bunch of water all night.
You've been doing it all night long.
That's also how we burn fat, right? It comes out through our breath. Absolutely. A lot of people don't know that. They think that you pee out your weight or poop out your weight, but it all comes out through our
it totally
90%
does.
or something.
Yeah, a lot of it does. So that those are simple, tricks and things. They're not tricks. I mean, good God. I mean, our grandmother knew them.
They're tips.
But they're tips. They're things that you can do, easy ways. And the reason why I'm saying these is to piggyback your point, Mark. It doesn't always have to be an event. If you guys are following along, you know that that we all got together today and did a big, goofball session with Mike O'Hearn at Gold's Gym. And there wasn't a lot of actual work done as much as there was poking jabs at each other and, just enjoying some camaraderie.
Photos.
Instagram photos and hanging out in the gym, occasionally picking up
what do
something
you expect on a Tuesday?
Yeah, whatever. But it doesn't always have to be an event, right? sometimes it can be easily done. And, and people think, I don't have time to go to the gym. Awesome. I don't care if you don't have time to go to the gym. Fall down on the floor and stand up a couple times. How does that feel? It's really simple. You know what I mean? So fitness is everywhere.
What a great workout. Fall on the floor 10 times.
What's kind of a favorite exercise of yours? Like, what's a staple that you can have almost anybody do?
Well, I mean, honestly, one of the things that I like to do most is to try to incorporate as many of the body parts at the same time. Mm. So if I'm not in a gym, right? If I'm not in the gym, I'm just out anywhere. Maybe I am very fortunate. I do live on the beach here in Southern California, so I'll get out in the deep sand and do stuff all the time, right? But one of the things that I do is I guess most people would say it's a modified version of a burpee. Right. Which I basically go down into a plank position and then stand myself back up. Right. So, and I don't do it in a jump stationary. I do it one hand down, 2 hand down, 1 foot back, 1 foot back. Right. Step up, stand up, reach for the sky. Right. And you go, wow, that sounds like head, shoulders, knees, and toes types of thing. Well, the reason why that worked is because it was a big central nervous system activation. So you don't always have to be buried under a ton of weight. But I can put that in, or I can put it in anywhere, right? I can put it in at the end of an exercise when I am doing heavy weights, right? Because it's a big central nervous system activation.
Does it look like a broken up burpee?
Yeah, it looks like a broken up burpee. So you're stepping instead of jumping.
Yeah, so there's maybe a little bit more mobility involved in it. Because a
Absolutely
lot of times the burpee just kind of hit the ground and pop
you
back up.
Yeah, and I actually do it slowed down. So, I go down into a forward bend. My hands go on the ground. I step back with my right foot. I step back with my left foot. Now I'm in a push-up position. Now I step forward with my left, forward with my right, stand back up, go back down. And somebody goes, well, that didn't seem very hard. Really? I bet you can't do it for 3 minutes.
Yeah, I don't even know if I can do one of those because I'm so immobile.
Right.
But I bet you if I did it, though, you'd be able to do it.
And if you can do it for 3 minutes, your heart rate will be 180. Right. So, it is a big central nervous system activation thing to do.
That's
and it engages a lot of your core.
That's interesting too. I did some DDP. The former wrestler has a yoga thing.
Diamond Dallas Page.
He put a heart rate monitor on me, had me do some DDP yoga with him. Very similar things to what you're talking about. Heart rate was 155 within 3 minutes of doing it.
That's exactly
and
right.
I was just like shocked.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't moving.
It's funny that you say that. I have
my feet weren't moving. I was just in one spot, and I was able to generate that much energy.
I have a really good friend who she encouraged me this year to really get into yoga, which I've given yoga a lot of shit over the years and stuff like that. But what I have is, and Mark, I was telling you earlier, I have a recurring injury, recurring lower back injury, a QL injury, and it's really debilitating. It's painful. I like to pick up heavy stuff. I love deadlifts. I like squats. I like feeling strong.
You said earlier your best squat's 625.
Yeah, 625 squat, 585 deadlift, and
those are good numbers, man.
And they're decent. And I did them in weighing like 198 pounds. So that's not
good,
terrible, man. But I can't do it now, and I probably can't do half of that now, and a lot of that is dealing with recurring injuries, right? And so my friend, she really encouraged me. She said, you really should just give it a shot. Just go 3 times a week. She said, get in the heat, get in the hot yoga. The infrared really helped to open up which I'd done some infrared sauna with Heath Evans. Heath has an infrared, and he and I do that some together, and.
You and Heath Evans are in a sauna together?
That didn't sound
weird,
too.
Man.
Should we be like?
That didn't sound too gay, did it?
It's over.
No, but it's a great therapy tool, and so she said, try to just start doing it and see how you feel. And I reluctantly did it, and not because I had a problem with it, but I felt like it was a waste of time. Right.
I didn't want to be around all those yoga pants.
Well, that's not the problem. That wasn't the problem. I'm as we've talked about. I'm very busy. I have a number of TV shows in the works and a second book in the works, and I have 6 different corporations. I'm very busy. So I feel like if I have 90 minutes free, I want to do what I want to do. I want to, like I want to throw around something heavy. I want to feel my parasympathetic nervous system on fire. I want to, feel like an animal.
You've been doing yoga though.
So I've started. it has been an absolute game changer for me. I mean, like I feel better, I sleep better, I recover faster. My lifts are going back up again. I'm really happy by it.
How often do you do yoga?
3 times a week. 3 times a week, and it's really become an enjoyable process.
Hot yoga or just
hot yoga? I prefer the hot and
most people
infrared.
And how long is the session?
I usually make it about an hour, and then I'm mentally checked out at that point, and then I just end up laying on the floor.
Infrared heat?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I end up just laying.
Where do you do that, Manhattan Beach
laying
or
on the
something?
floor. Yeah. So, but there are a lot of places all across the country. I have to travel back and forth to Dallas for work a lot, and there's some great places in Dallas that do infrared yoga.
What's the new book going to be? What's the next book?
Yeah, I can't tell you exactly, but we're going to stick in that. We're going to stick with that same kind of brain.
I said in book 1 is
brain
lie.
function.
Yeah.
That's
That's
exactly
book number 2, and then book 3 you go back to.
exactly right. I'm gonna go more into the food side of it.
Very cool.
That's about all the tip I'll give you about book number 2.
Cool. I'm just kind of curious.
But right, but we've got some other things that are happening right now too.
What's going on with some of these other businesses you
Yeah.
mentioned?
You
So there's
told us
development
about
of the product.
Can you tell us about that?
I'll tell you a little bit about that. We've got a very unique product that is coming out. There's the reason that I wanted to do the product that we're doing is that I have become obsessed with understanding. People might say, well, you had a heart problem, so you must be really into heart things. Actually, it was the mental side of it that really was super debilitating, right? So I became overly obsessed with how does the brain work in relation to our bodies, right? And how is it controlling things and the chemicals and so on. And so even my book, which being on the bestsellers list was a huge accomplishment for me, which also triggered a brain response of going, hell yes, you know what I mean? I always wanted to do this. So I'm overly obsessed with how the brain is reacting, right? And so we've created a product. I thought, wouldn't it be great to create a product that was enhancing brain cognition, enhancing mental focus and clarity, increasing brain elasticity, being able to promote memory and so on. And a lot of people, this is commonly called nootropics, right? And so we're creating a nootropic product, but we're doing it in a unique way. And I'm going to send you guys some of them so you can try it. You can try it.
I can't wait.
Yeah, and we're doing it in a food delivery, and I don't mean delivering you food. I mean we're doing it in a food product. So the delivery is different than if you were taking a pill. And I'll just leave that out there as a teaser until the product will be out, and it'll be out in the next couple months.
But we know what it is, and it sounds amazing. So you guys will love it.
Yeah, you guys will love it. I'm gonna send it to you guys, and you can promote the heck out of it. But so with that, and then I have a couple new TV shows that I have in development deals with.
How did some of the TV stuff come to be?
I'm very fortunate. I mentioned earlier, about having a great team around me.
Yeah.
I'm the only health and fitness expert in the world represented by WME, William Morris Endeavor, which is the largest talent agency in the world. So I'm very,
I know those guys.
Yeah, you know those guys, absolutely. They represent a lot of big stars,
like me,
like you,
like you, like WME right here.
Yeah, like The Rock, you know what I mean,
and Chris Bell.
Yeah, Chris Bell. So I've been really fortunate that they really believe in me from that standpoint, and they believe in the mission of what I'm trying to do. They've been very supportive of the 25 Days book and getting my brand out there, the Drew Logan brand, and all that kind of stuff. So I've had the occasion to be able to go around and recently just was kind of on a dog and pony tour of a lot of the production studios and pitching a new show idea. So but we've already got one in development as I'm out pitching more, and and there's a lot of interest in that type of stuff. And people say, well, did you want to be an actor? No, absolutely not. In fact, I might have been the only trainer in Los Angeles that didn't want to be an actor, right?
Yeah, you don't seem like you have that in you.
No, I don't. Right. And it's, I tell people all the time, I can't act happy if I'm not, you know what I mean? Yeah. So like, I really didn't want to do that. But the thing that I do love about it is a a big enough platform for me to be able to incite impact and change, right? And so if people will listen, and there is no greater platform for validation than television, frankly.
Yeah,
It's
a place to be.
And even if people go, well, but social media, yep, but it doesn't have the same validation. It just absolutely doesn't, even if it should. And if I personally feel that there are some people that have been given a voice in our careers that frankly should not have been given voices, right? And I don't need to throw them under the bus. It doesn't make me sound any smarter. But what I want to do is I want to be able to get that voice because I know the information that I'm going to deliver is going to be
You
correct.
can control it, yeah.
It's going to be succinct. It's going to make sense. It's going to be steeped in research and science, and it's going to be easy to digest, and that maybe people will actually do it. So that's why I'm continuing to go down the, as you well know, the never-ending stressful road.
This is I have a nerd question for you.
Yeah.
Did you get to meet Sylvester Stallone?
I did. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I did get to meet Sly, and
he was cool.
Couldn't have been cooler.
Yeah.
Could not have been cooler.
I've actually talked to him.
70 now, right? 71.
71.
He's my idol of all idols because he wrote Rocky, did all that, and I've talked to him on the phone about using Kratom and stuff like that. And to me, that was a huge deal. But I still haven't met him in person, so that's still like a nerd thing for me.
It's
bucket list.
It's a funny thing, like we come in contact, and you've probably experienced this as well. Being in Gold's Gym in Venice Beach.
Everybody walks in. You see Arnold every day.
Arnold, we see Arnold there every morning, and so there. And you'll know exactly what I'm talking about when I say it. But some people have a star quality, like you can have your back to them when they walk in the room, and you can literally feel the room.
Yeah.
Something weird.
The Rock
Something
gives
happens.
off that energy whenever he's in the gym.
When DJ's
you can almost
there,
feel it in the whole
feel
gym.
it.
You're like, something's going on here.
Yeah,
and then you go, oh,
there's
the Rock's
something.
here.
Oh, yeah, Rock's over there working out.
We met John Cena. We knew he had that.
Okay.
The day we met John Cena, we're like, you need to be famous.
Looked like he came out
what
of
do you
movie.
do?
Like, what do you do?
Nothing.
No.
He's like, I work out.
Yeah, right.
And he starts laughing,
Exactly. But Sly's that way. And I remember the first day that he walked on set when we were doing a publicity day, and it was like Elvis walked on.
Yeah.
Like just the energy.
I do cardio with his brother almost every day.
Yeah.
In the morning.
Frank's great. We see Frank all the time, and Frank's hilarious, and we we
Frank's
talk
the
all
one
time.
that introduced me to him and hooked me up with him and stuff like that. But
Frank's great.
it's just being at Gold's Gym and being around all those people, even Mike O'Hearn, who we're lucky to be friends with him and get to talk to him every day and see him every day.
Yeah.
Like those guys are phenomenal. Like most people don't get that when they go to their gym. They don't have those people around, and so we're very fortunate at the Mecca.
And the thing that's great about that is that when you get to meet somebody like Mike, and I hope he doesn't hear this, that I'm going to call him a legend, but he really is. Mike really is.
Been around for a long ass.
Been around for a long time and great at what he does, and he inspires a lot of people. Even if you're not a big fan, it doesn't matter. He still really does inspire people.
It's kind of what's awesome about him. He's so polarizing that everybody knows his name.
Yeah.
And at one point in the day, everybody in the gym is talking about him.
Yeah.
Whether they're praising him
or hating on
or
him.
trying to
or hating on him. Yeah. But at the end of the
People
day,
are like, I don't know, man. Is he on shit or
is he
not?
natural? It's like it doesn't matter. You're still talking about him.
He is. He's always had good genetics, and then someone else.
But it doesn't matter. You're still talking about him.
And which I think is hilarious. But when people bring that up, is he natural? Is he not natural? I go, look, he's a good dude. He loves dogs. He's nice to me. We've been friends a long time. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, but I know that he's, like he posted a picture the other day. He said, it was his high school football picture. He said, I was 6'3", 240, whatever, and he said, and here I am, now I'm this and this and this. And I said, yeah, but you're still 6'3", you slacker ass.
Yeah.
You couldn't make yourself taller, but he's always had great genetics. So, right. I was, when I was in the same boat, I was only 195.
We saw the pictures of him when he was 14 years old. He was huge, right? Huge. And to say that somebody couldn't have those genetics is not necessarily true, because I believe that we have it for strength.
Yeah.
Like Mark and I. Uh-huh. I have a lot of injuries and I'm beat up, but we were able to do things that a lot of other people just can't do. right off the bat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There was no adaptation period.
It's funny that you say it's funny that you say that, because I had this conversation yesterday. My best friend on the earth is Gunter Schlierkamp, who is one of the.
Oh, is he? I didn't know that. I love Gunter.
Yeah, we were at each other's weddings and everything.
He's the man. Yeah.
And he, I see him all the time, and we are the other person that each other goes to when we literally don't want to talk to anybody else on the earth. You know, stressed out or pissed off or whatever, and or hang out and celebrate. You know, I was with him the day that he found out he was going to be a dad. You know, I mean, like that kind of stuff. But we were having this conversation yesterday, and somebody had questioned him about, back during the competitive years of, well, isn't that just all steroids? And he said, I will make you a deal. He said, I will buy all of your steroids for you for 1 year, and I will train you. If you can even place in a state level show, then it's on me. He said, genetics will outplay any level of drug, any level of diet, any level of supplement, any level of anything. You genetically have it or you don't, right? To some extent.
Yeah.
You can enhance it a little bit, and genetically you can or you can't.
For the people that don't know who Gunther is, he was competed in the Olympia probably like 20 times, right?
Yeah, so for 10 years.
Been around for a long time in bodybuilding.
Well, Gunther is one of only 2 people to ever beat Ronnie Coleman.
Yeah.
So
that's who Gunther is, if you don't know.
So if you don't, I mean, if you don't know who Gunther is, you probably know who Ronnie Coleman is. You know what I mean?
He's tall and he's jacked.
Yeah.
And
when we met, he was 335 pounds.
He looks really good. I don't know what he looks like right now, but I saw him not too long ago, and he looked so healthy and a lot fair. And just like lean and really, he looked really good.
Yeah, he stays very healthy, and we were commenting on this yesterday, but it would be nonsensical. I mean, he was on stage. His on stage weight was 301, right? Oh. On stage.
That's crazy.
Sliced and diced and 301 pounds, right? And it would be stupid to try to maintain that, right?
It'd be ridiculous.
It would be stupid.
First of all,
it would be stupid, right? To even try to maintain that. And he's been retired now for 2006 was his last show. So he's been retired going on 12 years, and he still walks around at 265 pounds.
He'll always be huge. I think that's the thing. Like, you'll never lose.
Human.
Yeah, you're never going to lose all that.
He's a huge human. His hands are like a bunch of bananas. I mean, they're enormous. You know what I mean? But my point is getting into genetics is that just like you guys were genetic for strength, my background, I wasn't genetic for strength, but I was genetic for long-term strength endurance. I was having this conversation the other day. I think you and I were talking about this, is that my high level of squat, at 600 plus pounds, I could only do it one time, and it was spine numbing, right? But I could drop 100 pounds and do half a dozen reps, right? Or I remember the best deadlift combination I ever did is I did a 405 pound deadlift, but I did it, I think, 17 times, right? But I could only go up to like a 5 1/4 for a single. You know what I mean?
The reps.
Yeah. I was always.
And we were the opposite. We were like, our reps weren't that good. Like, whatever we could do for 3, you can do 100 pounds more or something.
Yeah, I could never do that. I could get up really close to my limit, and still be able to do a lot of volume. You know what I mean? And that translated into athletics. I mean, even when I was in high school, and playing football, I would never come off the field. Literally, never left the field. Special teams, offense, defense, never, so.
When you're doing your diet or you're recommending stuff to people, do you ever look at blood work, or maybe only if the person's unhealthy?
So that's a great question. And it depends on where that person's background is and where they're starting from. Usually if somebody has no, like they're not athletically, inclined at all, they haven't done anything, and rarely does someone come up to me and go, hey, can you help me? I'm already been doing a lot. I'd like to progress more. It's usually somebody who is doing not a blooming thing, and they feel terrible, right? And then, will you help me? And then absolutely, I always suggest that they have all of their blood work done. And I have a doctor that I recommend that they work with, and he'll go in and he does all of their blood work to determine if there are hormone imbalances and things like that.
Truth be told, this is the first time in my life that I've been worried about blood work or even started to look at it. But looking back, I think it's a big mistake that I think we should have been looking at our blood work, 20 years ago, and we just weren't doing it.
Yeah.
But I think that, and as technology gets better and things get cheaper and easier, I think that'll move into being easier. Right now, it still is a little bit of a hassle to get your blood work done.
A little bit of a hassle.
Still costs $400.
It's still expensive. Our insurances aren't paying for it yet.
We'll get
but
there,
all that
though,
stuff's going to change.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people coming up with like simpler tests that you can do at home and things like that will start to come out.
Yeah.
We're seeing all that emerge, so hopefully it'll get easier.
And by the way, if you're listening and you're going, I wonder if I should have that done. Well, maybe you should, but the easiest way to measure whether or not you should get healthy, undertake a diet, start a workout program, is get out of the shower, stand buck naked in front of a mirror, and look at your reflection. If you do not like what you see, then yes, you should undertake a nutrition program and some kind of exercise program.
And you don't, if you're a man and you look down and you don't see a penis, then you need to get on this program.
Well, you know what I mean.
Your stomach.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But at any rate, and I say that half jokingly, but at the same time, there are a lot of just postural things. It requires muscle and strength to stand up straight, right? And the majority of people nowadays spend their days working in a seated position, right? So if you can stand in front of the mirror and it feels like an effort to stand up straight, to align your shoulders with your ears, aligned with your hips, aligned with your knees, right? Then there's something you need to be working on, right? It doesn't matter whether or not your body fat is higher, but you could start there. You could just start there, stretching, mobility, things like that. And then obviously the nutrition needs to happen, and you need to do something, in a strength capacity. You know what I mean?
Do you have a couple tips for people to be less fat?
For people to be less fat.
Well,
right?
That's kind of how we always put it.
Yeah.
It's kind of jolts a lot of people, but it's just kind of funny. So
to be less fat. Well, I think and Mark and I were talking on our 10-minute walk, about some simple things that you can do, to make some quick and easy changes. What I like to do is to teach people that they can be successful today, right away. In fact, you can be successful in the next 2 or 3 hours. One of the things that I genuinely dislike about most of the information out there from health and fitness is that you have to buy such and such as 8-week program, or the 12-week program to your best abs ever, or the whatever, right? That's BS, right? Because if yesterday I did no exercise and today I decided I was going to do exercise and I fulfilled that commitment to myself, boom, I am 100% successful, right? That's all you should really be measuring was today better than yesterday, right? And really the way that there's a book that I am not even going to mention that I detest, that I threw under the bus for an entire year as I was proposing my book. And it really deals with these setting unrealistic goals in a 30-day period of time. That's all I'm going to say about that freaking book. But what it says basically is if I'm on day 17 and I eat something I'm not supposed to, you lose, back to day 1,
you got to start over?
You got to start over, right?
Jeez.
That's not the way life works, right? So really the way that my book works and the thing that I teach the most, and that's the thing, I didn't write this book from a standpoint of going, hey, I'd like to come up with a genius idea. This is actually the shit I teach, and I have for over 2 decades. And there are thousands of people still in shape because of the programs that I implemented with them. And the way to do it is this. We've all heard this, if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail, right? So if you woke up today and you still don't have a plan, I can guarantee you're going to hit the target you are not aiming at, right? So you aim at nothing, I guarantee you're going to hit it. It's pretty simple, right? So first off, have what your plan is going to be. And maybe it's just 3 meals a day and a 21-minute walk, because we talked about that's the way to go. Okay, so you have one exercise requirement that you have to do today, and it's a 20-minute walk, right? All right, if you make it for 15 minutes, Right? You make it out of 15 out of 20 minutes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you're 75% of the way there. Great. So that's a 75% grade on your exercise. And if you were supposed to hit these 3 meals and you hit 2 out of the 3, well, then that's let's call it 66. Let's call it a 70%, right?
Yeah.
Average the 2 of those together. That's 145 divided by 2. Then you're about a C grade for the day. You're about 75%, right? That's pretty good.
But if yesterday you were a D or an F, then you did better than yesterday, right?
But don't even look at it from that standpoint. Look at it as meal 1, I need to have this. Eat that. Boom, I'm successful, 100%. Meal 2, I'm supposed to have this. I did it. Boom, I'm supposed to have this.
And the rule is like you always aim for 100%, but you'll probably end up around 80, and that's okay.
The rule of the rule that I've found over the years is that everybody that stays at a combined score above 85% hits their goals and doesn't fall out, right? They stay in that space.
So you can have a little bit of flexibility.
There's a little bit of flexibility. And that's the way your life really works. You know, you ate perfect, you did your workouts, you did everything you were supposed to do. You showed up and it was Bob's birthday at the office and you had a couple bites of birthday cake. Okay, deduct the points and move on with your life. Don't beat yourself up over it and fall off a cliff.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, just deduct the points.
And don't even bother not being social and not having it.
Who
just be
freaking
like,
cares?
Fuck it, I'll have it.
Just go, I'm gonna eat half a piece of cake. I'm gonna have to deduct 20 points from my grade for the day. Move on.
It's a choice you make. It's a trade-off. Right?
There you go. Move on with your life.
Choose to get a better grade or
Move on
choose
with your
to
life.
eat the cake.
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly
What's the biggest thing you've learned from a business standpoint? It sounds like you had some success, had some failures.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing that I can tell you about that. And I say this a lot. I won't get into business with someone, even if it's someone I hire, right? An attorney or an agent I don't want to work with anybody that has never felt what it feels like to fail. Try and fail, right? Because failure is the cruelest but best teacher that there is, right? And so for someone that says, I'm awesome, I never lose, I'm king of the mountain. Well, you're also uneducated on what it feels like when something is running off the rails. You don't even know what it feels like. You don't know when it's coming. So when it does finally hit you, you're never even going to see it coming, right? So the thing that I've learned in business probably most is that you need to say no to more things than you need to say yes to, right? Because most of us, I guess, can come up with a lot of pretty good ideas. And you can do anything you want, but you can't do everything, right? So narrow it down. Say no to most things, right? That's frankly what I do. I'm saying no all the time. Nope, not doing that. Nope, not doing that. So say no to most things and then get really, really exceptional at the things that you do, right? So that's what I've tried to focus on. And then to try to do it at such a level that even your peers respect what you do, right? That even your competition respects what you do, where they're going like, damn, he really figured that out, like we should do something else. We should not do what he's doing, right? And the way that comes is from thinking deeply. I saw a great bumper sticker the other day, said, think a lot. It's not illegal yet, right? And so, but we don't do that, and in the common marketplace, in the common society, and I blame this directly on social media. People think it's a millennial thing, but I think it's a social media thing. Nobody has any patience or stick-to-itiveness, I call it. You know what I mean? They go, somebody will launch a new product and they go like, it just didn't hit. And I'm like, well, when did you launch it? Last Thursday. I'm like, holy God, what do you mean it didn't hit? I mean, it's Tuesday, like you haven't even given it a week. You really got to give it its time and you really have to go hard for it. So I think a lot of people don't understand that the amount of kind of legwork that you have to put behind stuff. So patience, saying no, and then just plain old freaking hard work, man. You got to roll up your sleeves and you just got to get after it. You got to quit looking for the quick fix. I mean, there's not going to be a quick fix. And somebody says, well, Drew, you moved to LA, you ended up on television, you got a best-selling book. I was here for freaking 10 years before that happened. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like hustling.
And you worked really hard to make it happen.
Yeah, right? So it wasn't an overnight success. You really have to hustle.
I graduated 10 years I graduated film school 10 years before Bigger, Stronger, Faster came out.
Same thing.
It took 10 years.
You weren't sitting on your hands for 10 years.
No,
You
I
were
was
working
trying to
just as hard.
I was trying to do shit. It just wasn't happening.
Right. So you have to have a certain amount of patience. I hope it doesn't take 10 years for you if you're listening. I hope it goes faster for you. But you need to go into it knowing that the real separation for you being successful and for the guys that won't be successful, or girls, or or whatever, you have to understand that when you find the crosshairs, the point between what others are unwilling to do and then what is slightly outside of your comfort zone. If you find that point of demarcation, then you're about to hit the magic point, because that's the point where things really start to get good. This feels slightly uncomfortable. Hey, nobody else is even willing to do this. Well, I'm telling you, on the other side of that is going to be the biggest success you've had thus far, and keep pushing that carrot forward. You know what I mean? So those are the things I've learned.
Cool. Where can people find you?
You can find me, drewlogan.com. All my social medias are all the same. The Drew Logan, at the Drew Logan. I'm most active on Instagram, just because I like it. I don't really get into which one's more effective or any. I don't really care about that.
People can pick up your book 25 Days on
25 days
Amazon.
On Amazon.
iTunes has the audiobook and the regular book.
Nook, Kindle, you can get it everywhere.
You can pretty much find it anyway. It's called 25 Days.
25 Days. 25 DAYS. And please, if you get the book and you like it, leave a review. If you see me out, please, I'd love to sign it for you, and love meeting you guys, and leave comments. So
strength is never weakness. Weakness is never strength. Later.
Later.
Thank you, guys.